Okay, welcome to the our second day of lectures in math, which is fractions. And there are three different sets of PowerPoints. This is part one, so we'll start easy and get progressively stronger. I'm going to ask you guys to participate to a certain amount. Don't feel like I'm putting you on the spot. We're amongst friends here. So start with a chocolate bar, half the bar. Let's see, 1/2 of the bar, or 6/12. You hopefully recognize that 1/2 is equal to 6/12. 1/2 is the simplified version of 6/12. And you will be simplifying every fractions you do in this class. So we're going to find out the differences between the numerator and the denominator, the difference between improper fractions and mixed numbers, reducing fractions to lowest terms or simplifying consistently. Let's start out. So examples of fractions are, if you're using letters, A over B, A on top of B, numerator is on top, denominator is on the bottom, and 5/12 and 3/4 are examples of proper fractions, and we'll get into the distinction between fractions in a couple of slides. So the numerator is always the number that is on the top. The bottom is always the denominator. So numerator and denominator. You can write whole numbers as a fraction. 7 is the same as saying 7/1. Just as the whole number 10 is the same as saying 10/1. And I will be using that next week. So just kind of keep that factoid in the back of your mind. So to differentiate between proper and improper fractions. First of all, could anyone tell me if 3/5 is a proper or an improper fraction? Yes, Taylor.
It would be a proper fraction.
Proper fraction. So a proper fraction, exactly right. Thank you, Taylor. Is a number where the numerator is smaller than the denominator. Okay, that's one way of looking at it. You can also think of it, if you divide the numerator by the denominator, you will get some number less than 1. So 7/2, on the other hand, that would be an example of an improper fraction because the numerator is larger than the denominator. And you will get some number that is greater than 1 if you divide the numerator by the denominator. If you divide 7 by 2, you get 3.5, which is obviously larger than 1. And 9/9 is another example of a proper fraction. It's also equivalent to 1. And that little fact, if you put one number over itself, it is equivalent to 1. And that is also going to be equivalent next week when we're solving some proportions. Okay, so you have an equivalency between fractions. Oh, that's some old stuff from yesterday. Let's just clear the whole thing. So we should be able to see that 3/4 is the simplified version of 9/12. In other words, 3 goes into 9 3 times, and 3 goes into 12 4 times. That's what I'm saying. So they have a factor of 3 in common. 9 divided by 3 is 3. 12 divided by 3 is 4. There's nothing in common, no factors in common between 3 and 4 except 1. And once you have reached a state of simplification where the only factor they have in common is 1, you have simplified a fraction as far as possible. So reducing to lowest terms or simplification. So lowest terms are when the only term they have in common is 1. And could someone tell me if the proper fraction 12/15 is in lowest terms at this point? Yes, Taylor.
It could probably be divided again by 3.
Okay, so let's divide both the top and the bottom by 3. Make sure they are both divisible by 3. Okay, so 12 divided by 3 is 4, and 15 divided by 3 is 5. So there's nothing else in common between your numerator and the denominator except 1. So you have simplified 12/15 to 4/5. Perfect. And we've already gone through 3/4 is already simplified. We did that when we simplified 9/12. 6/8. I'll just go ahead and do this one. I can see that they are both divisible by 2. Divided 6 by 2 to get 3, and divide 8 by 2 to get 4. So 6/8 is equivalent to 3/4. And 10/70. Now, sometimes you have multiple factors in common. 10/70 would be one of those cases. You always know that if a number ends in 0 or an even number, it's divisible by 2. If you ever get stuck and you have like some big 1,000 and something over 500 and something, if they either end in 0 or have an even, both end in an even number, you'll know they're both divisible by 2. So I'm going to do this the long way just to show that you can just keep taking factors out until you have your fraction simplified. So I can divide both the top and bottom by 2, by 2. So I have 5 over 35. Okay. 10 divided by 2 is 5. 70 divided by 2 is 35. However, in this case, so I know that these are both odd numbers, so they do not have a 2 in common. We've taken all the 2's out, but 5 goes into both numbers. 5 goes into 5 one time. 5 goes into 35 7 times. And we have simplified the fraction 10/70 to 1/7. Now you have the simplified version of 10/70. You don't always have to do it this way. You could probably also see that both 10 and 70 are divided by 10. So 10 goes to itself once. 10 goes into 70 7 times, and you arrive at the exact same place, 1/7. Okay? So there are many ways to simplify a lot of fractions. And so fractions to lowest terms, we have done all of these. Remember, I'll reiterate this again, always, always reduce to lowest terms. So we've learned about proper fractions, improper fractions, and the last type of number we're going to look at is a mixed number. And a mixed number is exactly that, is a mixture of a whole number and a proper fraction. So an instance of a mixed number would be 1 is the whole number and 2/3 is the proper fraction associated with the mixed number 1 and 2/3. Okay, so proper fractions, improper fractions, mixed numbers. We're good. Another example would be the whole number 5, proper fraction 7/8. Okay, now mixed numbers have some interesting qualities to them. The first being that you can change a mixed number to an improper fraction. So an improper fraction can be written as a mixed number, and a mixed number can be written as an improper fraction. To wit, let's change the number 1 2/3 to a mixed number. And we do that by multiplying the denominator by the whole number and then adding the numerator. So 3 times 1 is 3 plus 2 is 5. You keep that denominator. So 1 2/3 is equivalent to the improper fraction 5/3. So let's do it with 5 7/8. 5 7/8, the same as 5 times 8 plus 7. So 5 times 8 is 40, plus 7 is 47, and you just bring the denominator over and turn that into 47/8. Check that these are simplified. Is it simplified? Is it simplified? The answer in this case is yes. So you have successfully converted those mixed numbers into improper fractions. And most people find that a lot easier than converting from an improper fraction back into a mixed number. But you'll get a chance to do that. It's just reversing the process we just did, okay? So there's a shortcut way to change a mixed number to an improper fraction. I basically just skip straight to the shortcut way. Multiply the denominator times the whole number, add the numerator, set that over the denominator, and simplify. Okay, so let's have you guys practice. So if you would do number 7, which is 15 2/3, and convert that into an improper fraction. And do 14 29/31, which is number 12, and convert that into an improper fraction as well. I'll give you a little bit of a head start here. All right. Any Speedy McSpeedersons get the answer for number 7 yet? Okay, how about Charity?
So I got 47/3.
Okay, and how did you get there?
How did I get there?
Yeah.
By multiplying 15 by 3.
Okay.
It's 45.
Yep.
And then adding the 2, which is 47.
Excellent. Which gives us the 47/3. And then, of course, you obviously double-checked that there are no factors in common, which there aren't, and arrived at 47/3. Great. And did anyone get 14/29 converted? (14 29/31). I'm sorry. Okay, so let's run. I actually need the calculator for this one, and you all have this handy little calculator here built in. Use this with some frequency. So 14 times 31 plus 29, so 14 times 31, 434 plus 29 gives me 463/31. Okay, and that is reduced since nothing goes into both 463 and 31 except 1. Okay. Good. Everyone okay with that concept, or would anyone like me to work another example? Okay. Good. So you can also change, since you can change a mixed number to an improper fraction, just like I said, you can do the reverse and change an improper fraction into a mixed number. And you do that essentially by seeing, I'll give you the shorthand version, seeing how many times the denominator will go into the numerator without exceeding it, and that will be your whole number out front. Once you have that whole number out front, you multiply that by the denominator and subtract that from the numerator. It's a lot of gobbledygook if you don't know how to do it, but let me show you exactly what I'm talking about. So you see how many times 4 goes into 11. I know that 4 times 3 is 12, so I know 3 is too big, so obviously 2 is the whole number in that case. And then multiply the denominator times the whole number, which is 8. 4 times 2 is 8. And I'm subtracting 8 from the numerator. So 8. 11 minus 8 is 3. And we keep that denominator, which is 4. So 11/4 is equivalent to the mixed number 2 3/4. If you're all not sure, and you're real comfortable changing mixed numbers into improper fractions, just double check your work. 2 times 4 is 8, plus 3 is 11/4. There you go. 11/4 is equal to 2 3/4, which is still equal to 11/4. So people tend to find that one a little more difficult. And I'll show you another trick with a calculator, too, if you get some ungainly. Like something like this. So I will do number 24, 769/27. Got some pretty big numerators and denominators. So first thing I'm going to check, sometimes I like to just simplify right out of the gate. That way I don't have to do it at the back end, but you can do it either way. No, I thought maybe 3 went into both of them. No, so nothing goes into both 769 and 27. I'm just experimenting here. Sometimes that's what you do. So 3 does not go into them. 9 does not go into both of them. 27 does not go into both of them. So that is, believe it or not, already a simplified fraction. So let's find out what that whole number is. So I'm going to divide 769 by 27. I'll get 28 point blah, blah, blah. So that's telling me that the whole number is 28. So now the hard part is done. We already know what the whole number is. So now it's a matter of multiplying 27 times 28 times 28 and getting 756. So 769 minus 756 is 13/27. Get my phone out the way here. So we have our answer. 769/27 is equivalent to 28 and 13/27. Double check you have it simplified. And then you can always check your work. 28 times 27 plus 13 gives you 769/27. Okay? So how about you guys try your hand at number 23. Looks like a nice challenge for y'all. 428/15. Oh, first of all, let me take the temperature of the room. Does everyone understand the process more or less, or is anyone confused about this process of converting improper fractions into mixed numbers?
I'm feeling good about it.
Okay, excellent. Then onward with the example. Convert 428/15 into the mixed number. start. So let's divide 428 by 15, and we'll get 28 once again. And then 15 times 28 will give us 420. 428 minus 420 is 8/15. 28 and 8/15. Did you guys all get that? Good. Excellent. Okay, so that takes us through part 1 of today's lectures. That is that. Okay, so let me pull up my next fraction lecture. So the next thing that we are going to be looking at is fractions part 2. Would you rather have 1/6 or 3/4? Assuming that the purple is something good, you would definitely want the 3/4. However, you will notice that in the fractions 1/6 and 3/4, you have different denominators. So we will learn if you have different denominators, you will be able to add these two fractions together. A preview of what's coming up. So the lowest common denominator between, and I'll just put this out there, I'm going to circle back to how you arrive at this number, is 12. So 6 is the first or lowest number that both 6 and 4 will divide into. Since you needed to add, multiply 6 times 2 to get 12 and 4 times 3 to get 12, you'll need to multiply 1 times 2 and 3 times 3 as well. Otherwise, you'll be changing the fraction, obviously. So 1 times 2 is 2. 3 times 3 is 9. Now you have lowest common denominator. So as long as your denominator is the same, just add the numerators and come up with 11/12. Double check that you are simplified and you've successfully added two fractions that don't have the same denominator. And we're going to get more practice with this, never fear. You didn't quite follow along with this. Exactly what I said. 2/12 plus 9/12 equivalent to 11/12. So we're going to be performing addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division of fractions. And we are going to start with adding. Believe it or not, adding and subtracting are harder than multiplying and dividing fractions. So the first and easiest instance is when you already have a common denominator. So if you're going to add 3/7 plus 2/7, you already have a common denominator. So you can just skip straight to adding the numerators and getting 5/7. Double check it simplified, and you've added those two fractions together. That is almost as easy as adding whole numbers. That one I'm not too worried about. Subtracting, exactly the same process, just a different operator. 3/7 minus 2/7. 3 minus 2 is 1. And keep your numerator 1/7. Easy as pie when you have common denominators. However, oftentimes the case will be when you have unlike denominators. In this case, you have to find that lowest common denominator and then complete the process. So let's take a sample here and work through it. So we're going to add 5/12 and 7/18. So is someone familiar enough to tell me what the lowest common denominator between 12 and 18 is? Okay. So the way, until you become kind of intuitive with this process, I have a way to kind of grind it out and arrive at the lowest common denominator. And what I do is take the larger of the denominators, which in this case is 18, and start multiplying it by whole numbers until you find a number that the other denominator, in this case 12, will divide into it. In that case, you will have the first number that both denominators will divide into. So let's go through this. So 18 times 1 is 18. Does 12 go into 18? It does not. Going 18 times 2, you get 36. Does 12 go into 36? It does. So we have a winner. Our lowest common denominator is 36. So now we've actually done the hard part. Let's set up our problem and solve it. So let's rewrite this with that LCD, lowest common denominator of 36, right there. Now we needed to multiply 12 times 3 to get to 36, so we need to also multiply 5 times 3. So we'll get 1536 equivalent to 5/12. We need to multiply 18 times 2 to get to 36, so we need to also multiply 7 times 2. And 7 times 2 is 14. Now we have two fractions with the same common denominator of 36. Let's add the numerators. 25 plus 14 is 29, and 36 goes right there. Now you're not done. Double check that you have already simplified and make sure there are no terms in common between 29 and 36 that will both go into both 29 and 36, and there are not. So the result of adding 5/12 and 7/18 is 29/36. Okay? Did everyone follow along with that one okay? Anyone not follow through with it? Okay, so I'm going to give you guys a chance to practice. All right, so do number 47. Add 3/4, 1/8, and 5/6. So you have three fractions. You're going to have to find the lowest common denominator between 4, 8, and 6 and perform your addition. Okay. Does everyone know where to start on this process, or does anyone need me to get them started? We're all good? Okay. I'll let you work on that for a bit, and then I'll jump in. All right. So, like I said, I'll look at the largest denominator, which is in this case 8. Multiply that by 1, we'll get 8. 4 goes into 8, however, 6 does not. Lowest common denominator is not 8. Multiply 8 times 2, we'll get 16. 4 goes into 16, 6 does not. That is not our lowest common denominator. Multiply 8 times 3, we'll get 24. 4 goes into 24, as does 6. So we have a lowest common denominator, 24. All right, now let's take that information and rewrite our fraction with that common denominator. All right, we know it's all going to be set over 24. All right, 4 times 6, 8 times 3 is 24, and 6 times 4 is 24. So times 6 times 3 times 4. 3 times 6 is 18. 1 times 3 is 3. And 5 times 4 is 20. Now let's add those all up and get 18 plus 3 is 21 plus 20 is 41 over 24. Let's double check that there aren't any factors in common. There are not. So the improper fraction 41/24 is a correct answer. And unless it specifies, you can either leave your answer in the form of an improper fraction, or if you're just someone who likes looking at mixed numbers, if those makes more sense, you can go ahead and convert this into a mixed number if you so desire. So that'd be 1 and let's see, 41 minus 24 will give us 17/24. So you can either write it as 41/24 or 1 and 17/24. Either answer is a simplified version, and I'll accept either one unless a question happens to ask you specifically to write it as an improper fraction or a mixed number. For instance, on the homework, those questions 1 through 6 on the part 3 homework, you can write it either way, either as a mixed number or as an improper fraction. Okay, exact same thing, and I think I'm just going to brush on this. You have the exact same situation when you're subtracting. You just find that lowest common denominator and then subtract rather than add, and then simplify. So in this case, I'll just run through an example really quickly. You can just follow along. 8/30 minus 1/20. The lowest common denominator is 60. Yep, because 30 times 2 is 60, which 20 also goes into. 60, 60. So 30 times 2 is 60. So 8 times 2 is 16. 30 times 3 is 60. 1 times 3 is 3. 16 minus 3 is 13 over 60. And that is in its simplest terms. So 13/60 would be the answer. Is there anyone who would like me to work more addition or subtraction of fractions? I'd be happy to do that if anyone would like a little extra help on that. Okay. You guys are sharp. So here is the big drawn out English version of how to add and subtract fractions. If you like looking at walls of text and that helps you understand math, there is your wall of text, step by step on how to add and subtract fractions. So now let's multiply our fractions. So written simply with variables, A over B times C over D is the same as A times C over B times D. Super simple. Want you to turn the A's and B's into actual numbers. So let's do it with 3/5 times 2/7. So multiply your numerators. 3 times 2 is 6. 5 times 7 is 35. Easy as that. The only thing you have left to do is to simplify it. Make sure there are no factors in common between 6 and 35. There are not. So your answer is 6/35. And then once you know how to multiply a fraction, remember just numerator times numerator, denominator times denominator, simplify. Done, walk away. So once you know how to multiply fractions, you also have everything you need to divide fractions. Order of operations. So let's just do a little drill using order of operations and fractions. So combining lesson from yesterday with today's lesson. Okay, we have PEMDAS. All right, so we have parentheses. So inside the parentheses, we have multiplication. So 1/2. So 3 times 1 is 3. 4 times 5 is 20. We have no more parentheses. Don't have any exponents. We do have multiplication again. 1 times 3 is 3. 2 times 20 is 40. And that is our answer, 3/40. Make sure that is simplified. And the correct answer using order of operations and multiplication of fractions is 3/40. Okay, I'm not going to worry about that. So moving forward to the division of fractions. So the division of fractions, I want you to internalize the phrase multiply by the inverse of the second term. What that looks like is A over B divided by C over the D is the same as multiplying A over B times the inverse, which in this case is D over C. Okay, multiply times the inverse of the second terms. So let's look at our first example of that. 1/2 divided by 1/4. You're going to be multiplying by the inverse of 1/4. So 1/2 times 4 over 1. Okay, inverse of 1/4. Now 1 times 4 is 4. 2 times 1 is 2. 2 goes into 4 twice, so your answer is 2. So that makes sense. There are 2 1/4 and a half. And here are some examples to work. I don't really like any of those, but let's do an example. We have 16 over 1. If you remember, if you set any whole number over 1, that is its fractional equivalent, divided by 1/8. So once again, 16 first times the inverse of your second term, which is 8 over 1. 16 times 8, let's see if I can do this in my head. That'd be 80 plus 48, 128. Double check that though. Yeah. Equals 128 over 1, or you can just say 128. Okay, any questions about multiplication or division of fractions from anyone? Looking good? Okay. Good, guys. This is going fast. I hope you're not just being polite, which is fine. If you're getting it, great. So only one more lecture, and this is by far the quickest one. We are just, since you've been looking at proper and improper fractions, you're going to get to work with mixed fractions in this last little piece here. Okay. Okay, which brings us to our last lecture. Thanks for hanging with me, guys. So you're going to perform addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division of mixed numbers, since you've already done it with proper and improper fractions. So our first example, we're going to be multiplying 2 and 3/4 times 3 and 1/5. So first step, you'll be using those skills of converting mixed numbers into improper fractions to turn both of those into improper fractions. The 2 times 4 is 8, plus 3 is 11/4, right? Times 5 times 3 is 15, plus 1 is 16/5. And now it just becomes a multiplication problem. So numerators, yes, Kara?
I've tried multiple times before. I can't open the PDF, and I cannot open Microsoft Word because I have to pay for it.
Oh, okay, I got you. Yes, so give me just a moment. The short answer is you're going to want to avail yourself of that Office 365 I talked about.
Tried that, still wasn't working.
We
Okay.
tried everything.
Yeah, I will show you how to do that here in just a moment.
And I'm still trying to figure it out.
So
You can't edit pages without-
the
you
short
can't
answer
edit
is you're going to want to open that 365 and then just
We
drag and
did.
drop. And
It still says do a free trial or buy something. It still says free trial or buy something.
yeah. I'll show you how to do that. Let me just get right through lecture here, and then I'll work with you guys on that. Okay. So 11/4 times 16/5 gives you 176/20. That is not simplified. So let's divide to see they're both even. So you have 88/10. Still are both even. You can divide both by 2 once again, and we'll have 44/5. And at that point, you have simplified those
It
fractions
still keeps wanting me to go
as
premium.
far as you can.
Whatever.
If I can get you to mute, please.
Up here on speaker.
To your improper fraction, you can leave it as an improper fraction or convert that back into a mixed number. I'll take either one, like I said. Just make sure and do give the answer if it does specify in the question either a mixed number or an improper fraction. And so that's multiplication of a mixed number. So division of a mixed number. Let's take 1 and 3/5 and divide it by 2 and 4/5. All right. So 5 times 1 is 5, plus 3 is 8/5. And divided by 2 times 5 is 10, plus 4 is 14/5. Now you need to multiply by the inverse of the second term. We have 8/5 times 5, 14. So I'll go 8 times 5 is 40. 5 times 14 is 5 is 70. So 40/70. This is, of course, not simplified since they're both divisible by 10 for starters. 10 goes into 40 4 times, and 10 goes into 77 times. So the result of 1 and 3/5 divided by 2 and 4/5 is 4/7. Okay. And that, in a nutshell, is everything you need to know. Yes, Taylor?
Just to make sure I have that understood. So we flip both fractions when we begin to multiply, or just the basic C to D.
What was the basic what was that again?
So the 14/5, that's the only fraction that flips, right? Since that's the second end of it.
You multiply times the inverse of the second term.
Okay.
Yep, exactly right. And you keep 8/5 right side up, and then you flip 14/5 into 5/14.
Okay.
If you flip them both, then you haven't changed anything. You're just multiplying. Okay. Does that make sense? Okay. Thanks for asking.
Yep. Yes, it does.
Okay. So does anyone want me to go over anything else, or is that all looking good to you guys?
It looks good to me.
Okay. Perfect. That's all I got. Thank you very much for your